Blowout.
That was your tire?
Yeah, tire blew out.
Your tire freaking blew out!
Yeah.
How's it going, guys? Motorcycle Boss. So right now I'm going to be doing about a 2, maybe 3-part series on tires, and specifically this video is going to be talking about what you can find on the sidewall of a tire and how to read the codes and all that. So we'll get into that. This code right here is really confusing to a lot of people, but it's actually not that bad. So let's start from the beginning. 200. This is telling you how many millimeters wide the tire is. Sometimes you'll see 120, 180, etc. 55 is an aspect ratio, and we'll get into that in a second. Z is a speed rating. R is the type of construction, meaning radial. 17, sometimes you'll see 16, 18, 20, etc. This is the rim size. M/C basically just means that this is designated as a motorcycle tire. Then you have over here in parentheses the 78W. 78 is a load code, load bearing code, basically telling you how much weight the tire can handle, and W is the true speed rating, and we'll get into that. So this code is really confusing to a lot of people, but it's not that bad. So we'll break it down section by section. First thing is 200. 200 stands for 200 millimeters. It's specifically talking about the width of the tire from sidewall to sidewall, how wide it is. So my tire is 200 millimeters wide. Next part is 55. That is an aspect ratio. And if you know anything about an aspect ratio, all it's talking about is the height of the tire as a percentage compared to the width. So basically that means the tire is 55% of 200, and that's what it is in height. So if you just do the math, you figure it out. Now, the next part's gonna be, let me just take a look. Z is a speed rating. The speed rating of Z is, if I remember right, it's 149 miles per hour, roughly right around there. So this tire is rated for 149 miles per hour. Now, we're gonna move over to R, which is the construction. The construction of the tire radial just means that there's metal bands that go around the tire. And there's different kinds of construction. It's another topic. We'll talk about that another time. We have 17. Sometimes you'll see 16, 18, etc. And that just means the diameter of the rim that the tire is supposed to be fitted onto. I have a 17-inch rim, so I get a 17-inch tire. Does it make sense? And then you have M/C. That just means it's a motorcycle tire. Then you have 78W. 78 and W are two different things. Just because they're together doesn't mean that they both have anything to do with each other. 78 is the load-bearing weight code. It's a code specific that you can actually look it up online. 78 stands for how much weight that this tire can support, and you can look it up in a chart. W is the true speed rating. W is, if I remember, I think it's 168 miles per hour, somewhere around there. It's probably more, probably a little bit less. But basically, any tire that can do over 149 miles per hour automatically gets that Z speed rating that's in the middle of the code. If it can do anything higher than the following brackets, because there's like Y and W other ratings, it gets that second speed rating telling you what its true speed rating is. And that's loaded in with the load weight code as well. So right here, this is telling you the maximum load and what the pressure, what basically max pressure is cold. Notice it says 42 PSI cold. Whenever you check your tire pressure, always check it cold. Don't check it after you've gone for a ride, because it'll be inaccurate. So, although this says 42 PSI cold, we want to set our rear tire to roughly 38, roughly around 38 to 40 PSI, because you got to think, this is max pressure. And the front's going to be different. If the front was the same rating, I would normally set it to about 35, 36. Right here, this arrow is telling you rotational direction. That's really all it means. Some tires are rotation specific. They have to be rolling in a very specific direction. So this arrow is showing you the way of rotation. And these tread patterns are directional in some cases, which is why it's important. If you flip this around, the way the band construction is and the way the tire tread is manufactured, it will not work properly, and in some cases can actually start stripping your tread. This was an old back tire that I used to have, and it started going out, so I decided to do a burnout to get rid of its life. When I did the burnout, it actually split right down the middle, all the way, like super clean split, so I'm actually pretty proud of that. So I kept it as a souvenir, and it's also nice to have so I can teach people how to read tires. If you were paying attention earlier, this code should make a lot more sense to you now. This was the old rear tire that I used to have, and like the one I showed you earlier, the first set of digits said 200, but this one says 190. The reason this one says 190 is because when I got a new rear tire, I decided to upgrade, not necessarily upgrade, but modify the width of the rear tire to change how my handling was in turns. So this is 10 millimeters narrower than my old tire. So 190 in width in millimeters, 55% of 190 is the height. It's still got the Z speed rating, still radial, still fit on the same 17-inch rim, and it is still a motorcycle tire. There is the 75, which is a slightly different load code than the old one. I think that other one was a 78. But they still contain the same true speed rating of the W speed rating. And I'll put the whole chart for the load bearing weight and the speed ratings. I'll put a chart in the description. Now, this is one of the most important parts of the tire as far as reading it that a lot of people don't know about. It's called the DOT number. As you can see here, DOT. It's not on both sides of the tire in some cases. Normally it's only on one side. But the DOT number is really important because it tells you how old the tire is. I like all of these codes right here, the ENCX, DA, blah blah blah, all that. It's basically just telling you like where the tire was made, the company that made it, stuff like that. But the only thing that's really important is the last 4 digits right here, 3912. This tells me that there's 52 weeks in a year. 39. That means that this was made in the 39th week of 2012. Or it'll say like 4008. That means it was made of the 40th week of 2008, etc. If you are using a tire, let's say you bought a new tire and you looked at the DOT code, but it said it was made almost 2 years ago to the day you're buying it, that tire is already old, it's starting to harden, and it's not going to grip as well as you want it to. It's going to be difficult to find tires that are less than 6 months old, so try to stick with a tire that's less than 1 year old if you have the option of choosing. After about a year, the tire starts to get a little bit hard and reduces its gripping capability, increasing in chances of sliding out. So what I want to talk about is the speed rating. I don't think I explained it a whole lot. So there's 2 speed ratings on a tire. Let's say the very first one in the main code, let's say we have a code of 200 by 55 ZR 17 MC 78W, let's say that. So the Z right before the R is telling you that the tire is capable of 149 miles per hour plus. And then you have the 78W, the W being the true speed rating, and the 78 being the load-bearing weight. The 78W is together because the load that you would be applying to that tire is going to also dictate the highest speed rating that tire is capable of doing with that weight. So even though the tire is rated for over 149 miles per hour, it may have a restricted speed rating because of the amount of weight being applied, which would be the max load. And I don't want to confuse people a whole lot, but that just means more weight means the tire can't go as fast. So you have a different speed rating. And that's pretty much it. So hopefully I cleared that up so it makes a little bit more sense. The next thing I want to talk about is the construction. You have 2 types of construction as far as how the tires are made. You have radial and you have bias. Bias is metal bands that go all the way around the tire, but they're at an angle. They're kind of like diagonal all the way around the tire. And then you have radial, which is totally sideways, all the way around the tire it's basically perpendicular to the way that the tire is going. If it's going straight, radial would be making the bands go totally sideways all the way around the tire. And those are the two main construction types. Most tires are measured in millimeters. For instance, 200 millimeters, 180 millimeters. The first section of that number, like 200, 180, etc. And not all tires are measured that way. If you get some applications where you have really big tires, it's going to be measured in inches. So you might have like 28, 30 inches, etc. They're just measured in inches because they're too big. This way of measuring, the millimeters section, also applies to car tires, like regular car tires. The aspect ratio, that all works the same. And you have the load-bearing code, etc. They're all pretty much transferable over to the automotive section. The codes are basically universal. You just run into some odd cases where they're measured in inches, and that can kind of throw you for a loop a little bit, but the same thing pretty much applies. You have almost all the same information. But that's pretty much it. I can't really think of a whole lot else. I did look up the W speed rating just to double check, and it's actually 168 miles per hour that it's rated for. And there's also a whole bunch of other speed ratings. Like I said, I'll throw the speed rating, load bearing chart, all that in the description, so you guys can take a look at it, and you can compare your tires. One thing I do want to step onto really quick is how I went from a 190 to a 200. That changed how wide the tire was by 10 millimeters, because it's a 10 millimeter difference. The reason I did that is just to make it a little bit, like my contact patch, just a hair bit bigger, because it's a wider tire, so you're going to have a slightly bigger contact patch. And you can't go into corners as fast, so it's not as nimble, but it's a little bit more stable. There's pros and cons to both, you know, making it narrow and making it bigger. So it's all preference. But the other thing is making it taller or making it narrower, which is dealing with that aspect ratio. When I first got my tires, I think that they were a 50. They were like 190 by 50. So it was 50% of 190. That was the height of the tire. But I noticed that as I ride, the center, the crown of that tire, because it has a curve on it, the top of it would flatten out, and I'd be riding on a flat spot, and then I would kind of hit a little bit of a wall and then go if I wanted to go into a turn. As tires wear, they start to develop that flat spot, so I ended up getting a 200 to make it wider, and then I made, instead of a 50, a 55, so I made it 5% taller. So instead of having a crown like this, the crown was like this. It was a lot more steep. And what that did is, even though I would wear down the center of the tire and it would develop a little bit of a flat spot, it wouldn't be as pronounced because the tire's shoulders are so arched. And it basically makes the tire feel, at least in my opinion, I feel like the tire handles the same longer than having the 50. And I think that's pretty much it as far as this subject. I'll discuss other parts of the tires in the other videos, or maybe just one more video than this. But that's pretty much it. You guys have any questions, comments, concerns? Let me know. I'm not a genius. No one is. No one's perfect. So if I get anything wrong, or if you have any tips to let me know, or just share with the community, let me know, and I'll see if I can address it in the next video. But I appreciate you guys watching this video.